We're going to turn to our first panel to hear about the exciting research and projects that are taking place around food waste in higher education. And this is a really exciting panel. When we did the prep call for this, I was really inspired. So I'm excited to introduce Herz, a student at NYU Steinhardt. Give him a round of applause as he comes up to the stage. Natasha Bernstein Bunzl, a doctoral student at NYU Steinhardt. Give her a round of applause. And our good friend Jennifer Berg, the chair of the Department of Nutrition and Food Studies at NYU Steinhardt. Such a great group of folks. And Jennifer, I want to start with you because you have an incredible, I think you have an incredible job. You know what I mean? You get to work with some of the most talented people, I think, in the world. And I know you have students that have been working on food loss and food waste for quite some time. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the excitement you're seeing around this issue and around the solutions and ways to prevent food waste and then also scale those solutions.
Yeah, it is super exciting to see it on a grassroots level with students. And mostly when, it's easy to do it if they're getting involved in a large organization, but it doesn't have as much of an impact as when they start themselves.
Right.
And I remember, maybe Cecil is somewhere, and he could probably remind me, when we started Meatless Mondays at NYU. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like at first it was just a good tagline until we could really see students doing it, and then clamoring for trying to figure out a way to make it into a Tuesday or a Wednesday, how they were going to call it something different.
Sure.
They've also been really interested in doing it, whether it's starting a food pantry or working with the dining halls, or something on just very much their own immediate level. And I hear a lot of times they'll say that the backlash they get is when they go home to families
for the holidays,
and then parents are trying to understand sort of how we've indoctrinated them, perhaps sort of an anti-family rhetoric.
I'm okay with a cult of food waste prevention. I don't know about
No,
you all.
I'm okay.
Thank you for that, Jennifer. Natasha, when we spoke, we talked a little bit about the cultural piece to this conversation about food waste and how you're looking at that in your doctoral research. And I'm wondering if you can just elaborate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So my research, hi everyone, Natasha Bunzl. My research focuses on migration between differently structured food systems. And so I think one of the most shocking things for many people who arrive in New York City newly is the abundance of food that's seemingly available in grocery stores, but the inaccessibility of that food. Mm-hmm. And that kind of is a shock that is intensified and probably made more painful by the vision of food waste that also accompanies it. And so I think the problem of food waste is really a problem of misallocation and misdistribution of resources. And so that really is something that a lot of people see in stark relief when they arrive here newly. And I think, it's sort of the fish who doesn't see that they're swimming in the water, as we have probably in the United States been very accustomed to living in a vision of food abundance. Mm-hmm. It can be easy to miss those markers. But I agree with Jenny that it is, I also teach the undergraduate food systems class, and it's remarkable how even within 3 years, the awareness that students are bringing about food waste is really increasing. It's really exciting.
And we'll hear more about that cultural piece from one of our chefs later, but it's really important to recognize that when folks are coming from all over the world, they just sort of don't understand the amount of food waste that's happening in this country. It's shocking to them, as it should be, and it should be to all of us. Harrison, if I can turn to you, you recently received a grant to do something interesting with the scraps from NYU's food lab. What are you working on?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I just want to say it's a real pleasure being here. And I also just wanted to give praise to Professor Bunzl and Professor Berg. They're actually both my professors at this exact moment. Last April, I was at the Food for Thought Festival, and I know the co-founder's actually here somewhere in Naveen. So shout out to Naveen for organizing that. But yeah, I got some grant money to work on a project that was focusing on food waste. And so what I've been doing is at the food lab at NYU, after each class, after each food lab, they take all the scraps that normally would be thrown away, and the lab instructors freeze them. And what I do is I come and take those scraps, and I bought a freeze dryer with some of the grant money. And so what I do is I'll take those scraps, put it into the freeze dryer, and then make product out of what would be compost. So there's kind of a couple different angles that I'm taking with this. One of the things that I've been thinking about is, instead of you want to make a stir-fry dish with rice and tomatoes and peppers and whatnot, instead of buying the peppers and tomatoes and inevitably having some waste, instead using this super concentrated powder that still has the vitamins and minerals, nothing is going to go bad in it. You put a couple sprinkles in, and you get the exact same flavor that you would have from the tomatoes and the peppers. So it's been a real treat and a real privilege to be able to use this space. Also wanted to say thank you to Abe Connick and Lourdes Castro for allowing me to utilize the space. But yeah, it's been real fun.
Can you tell me about the reaction to this sort of spice blend, this concoction you put together?
From my professors? Yeah. They've been excited. One of the cool things about working with people in food is that they want to work with me. So later this week, I'm going to be meeting with Chef Connick, and we're going to be developing, at least on the flavor front, because the nutrition is there, but we want to make sure that the stuff, aside from being nutritionally dense, tastes really good too. So it's great working with people. And I have a background, and I was a pastry cook before coming to school at NYU, so I love working with food and collaborating with people and brainstorming.
And I think, Jennifer, that's what makes NYU Steinhardt so distinctive. It's that collaboration. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we always say that Steinhardt is at the intersection of theory and practice, and it is a lot. It's enough to sort of talk about food, or talk about ideas, or talk about problems, or talk about solutions, but it really is from the school level down to our department and to the students in all the classes. It's really the tactile experience of attacking problems, not just pointing at what they are, but really on a visceral level, feeling them and approaching and creating solutions.
And it's such a great forum for experimentation and testing these ideas, which I don't think a lot of universities or programs give students the opportunity to do, to try and fail and then do it again and keep experimenting.
Well, that's what I say. It's, when you have a lab, whether it's our food lab or it's our farm lab, we don't have to be successful.
Right.
That's just gravy, so to speak. It is these areas where we can just experiment and try things out. And it is best when it doesn't come from the top, but it comes from, I'm not trying to say undergrads are the bottom. That was a note to self. That was bad. But it really is great when it comes and it festers and it fosters from students themselves.
And just staying with you for another moment, having known you for a while, I know this really energizes you and gives you a sense of hope when things are not that hopeful sometimes.
Yes, I definitely am a pom-pom person, and I try to think about the positives, and I think about sort of food waste during COVID, and those were lessons that were learned. It was this golden opportunity where all of a sudden, where people never thought about food waste. Maybe the driver was anxiety. Maybe the driver was fear of their own insecurity about running out of food.
Right.
But then somehow over the course of all those months that felt like decades, there started to feel like that it was a cause. It was about something bigger than themselves, and it was about society. I hope we still have those.
I hope so too.
I feel like there's a little bit of a backslide, and so these kinds of events are really important to remind us that the hoarding was pretty unhealthy. And unnecessary.
Absolutely.
And maybe the making of sourdough bread, which seemed like an Instagrammable moment, also had some really impactful lessons from it.
It really helped create a movement, I feel like, but we need to keep that momentum going for sure. Natasha, when we spoke last week in preparation for this panel, you mentioned that we need solutions to rescue the surplus food waste at the restaurant and retail level, but we need to do more than just that, don't we? And I'm just hoping you can elaborate.
Yeah, so I think, of course, food waste is a problem from an economic, a sustainability, and a social standpoint. And thinking about it from the social standpoint, if we save and conserve resources by eliminating food waste either in the supply chain or at the consumption level, it's only a social good if we then redirect those resources towards people who are experiencing scarcity. And so I think that that's the sort of framing that I always try and kind of bring in to any question is like, what is the problem? How are you aiming to address this problem? And how are you going to actually evaluate the impact of what you're doing if you've kind of corrected for the problem that you started off with?
Yeah, it's really important. And it's important to share that sort of mindset with your students.
Well, it's really exciting to share a stage with a student of mine. I mean, I will say that the students at NYU and Steinhardt are so exciting to work with, and it is this really passionate group of young people who are engaged in the world, wanting to learn about it, and then practicing going out and putting all of the lessons to. And Harrison is a fantastic example of this. It's really exciting to hear about what you're doing in this space.
I appreciate that.
And Harrison, I'm the biggest cheerleader for NYU Steinhardt, but I don't think this kind of collaboration, experimentation, challenging different ideas happens at every school who's working on food and nutrition. Can you talk a little bit more about, your experience as a student and feeling that sort of support?
Yeah, I guess I will say that I'm blessed that being at NYU, I feel like I have had a good amount of support from the staff and from my fellow students, actually. It's been really great working with people, and I'm not sure I can speak to other students with, in different institutions. I will say, though, that when I went to the Food for Thought Festival, that was fantastic because those are students from all across the world, and they're all putting in the effort to combat food waste and just other challenges in the food system. So it's definitely taking place elsewhere, which is really great.
It is really great. For my final sort of question for you all, I always feel it's important, especially from this group, to give a call to action. So just a few seconds to give your call to action. Jennifer.
I'd say you don't have to think lofty. You can think really small. We were joking before. Last week I was in London and I went to the Churchill War Museum, and there was a poster up, and it was just about stopping food waste. And this is during World War II, and the ideas were just so simple. It was like, eat less meat, eat less wheat, don't waste, small portions. It was like, it's not brain surgery. It's just like, it's so simple, and we can just one tiny little action each day is all it needs.
Natasha?
Oh, gosh. I guess I would say to the point that I more recently made that each action this is a group of people who are engaged in this stop food waste action. So think about it in this kind of a holistic way as a economic choice, a social choice, and a sustainability and an environmental choice, and think about how you can balance each action across those three different, areas.
Thank you so much. Harrison, you get the last word.
One of the things I would say is part of my goal with doing this freeze drying process at NYU and reincorporating it back into the labs at NYU is to encourage students in the lab to consider a bit more before they waste. I know it's super easy. I've done it myself. You cut up some vegetables, you have some waste. It's so easy to just toss it away. And I'm not saying, you got to save everything, but just, I would say maybe putting a little bit more thought to saving it, making a stock out of it, just doing something with it, maybe add it to one other meal. I feel like that'd be a good way to just make the most of what you have.
Smart advice. Please give these panelists a round of applause. Thank you all for the work that you're doing.